I'm STEMilyK, your hostess to the world of STEM, and today I'm here with Miss Washington, who is the co-founder and CEO of KeepUp app and is also one of the co-founders of Black Women Talk Tech. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. So excited to be here.
So first, I just want to start with your education. So was STEM ever introduced to you when you were younger? And if not, how did you become exposed to it?
STEM was definitely introduced to me when I was younger. It didn't have the cool nickname of STEM at the time, but I definitely was really interested in math. I
Mm-hmm.
excelled with that, particularly in middle school and in high school. And then I actually took a class in high school on the coding name C++. And I was just sort of interested. Coding was just starting to
Mm-hmm.
get new around the time, and I wanted to see what this was all about. And I took that class, and I wish I had stuck with it
Yeah.
because now I could really use it. And that has turned into things like Objective C and coding for apps and all of these different things. It's really the baseline for a lot of these different languages now. And I never really stuck with it because I couldn't see into the future and couldn't see
Mm-hmm.
how it would apply to my life. So I ended up actually going into graphic design, which to
Oh,
me
wow.
was very similar, but I
Mm-hmm.
could actually visualize what I was making. And now it's sort of full circle where I'm using coding and I'm using the graphic design and I'm able to build this into technology.
So, how did this, exposure when you were younger lead to what you decided to study in college? And could you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the exposure led me to want to build something. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
I really love about being an entrepreneur, and particularly within tech, is that you're actually building something that's tangible and that people can use on a day to day basis. And so when I was in college for my undergrad degree, I studied graphic design, and
Wow.
that felt very tangible to me. We
Mm-hmm.
were building websites, we were building posters and logos and all these different things that businesses and companies can use in order to really speak to their customers. And that felt very real to me. But
Yeah.
I realized that I can incorporate that and build that into a larger company. And so now I'm really building something from the bottom up. And that's just very fulfilling for me.
So, after you pursued your degree in graphic design, how did that lead you to some of the careers that you've had in your life? And could you talk about what they've been?
Absolutely. So my career path has been all over the place. So I think I love to tell, especially young women who
Mm-hmm.
are going to college, don't stress out that much about having everything planned out
Yeah.
because you have no idea what's going to come along. So after I got my graphic design degree, I did Teach for America. I wanted to
Wow.
give back, so I was a special
Yeah.
education teacher. And then I went back into marketing, which was similar to what I was doing in college. And I did
Mm-hmm.
online marketing for magazines like InStyle magazine and TV Guide magazine. And we were really at the very beginning of social media
Yeah.
when it was Twitter just started and
Mm-hmm.
people were trying to figure out what to do with Facebook. And as a business, we were trying to figure all these different platforms out. So
Yeah.
it was really exciting to be a part of that. And I had no idea how much that would blow up
Yeah.
over the next 10 years. So it was great to be at the beginning of those things. And then I went back to business school. I got my MBA in marketing, finance, and entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I went into the agency side. So I worked at advertising agencies and branding agencies and then a social media agency. And
Yeah.
there, again, it came full circle to what I was doing in the very beginning of my career. I started learning about what they call big data for social media.
Yeah.
So all of these different posts are out there, and we now have the tools to analyze them and see what people are saying and doing and pull different insights out of it. So that was what I did right before I started Keep Up and Black Women Talk Tech.
So, specifically focusing on Keep Up,
Mhm.
what are some of your day to day responsibilities? How you went about, starting this tech company, really?
Mhm. Yeah, so as a CEO, my responsibilities, especially for a small tech startup,
Mm-hmm.
is really everything. I mean, you can joke that
Yeah.
we do everything from cool interviews like this to some of the most boring stuff you can think of, because your
Yeah.
hands are in everything. So for me personally, I like to focus on where my strengths are. So I have designed the app. I really work closely with my CTO, our Chief Technology Officer, to help build that out and build out the vision that we have. I do a lot in terms of hiring and marketing. So I have a good background in marketing, and then looking at our financials as well, seeing the money that's coming in, how are we going to spend it, and making those long-term decisions. So when I first started, that wasn't necessarily how it all
Yeah.
began. I think you're in the beginning, it's really about figuring out what your first step is going to be. And I think that's where people tend to get a little scared and they don't move forward, because there's so many things you can do at once. For me,
Yeah.
again, I just focused on my strength. I knew my strength was design. So for me, the easiest thing for me to do was just to create a wireframe of the design that I was going to have for that. And then it just felt real for me from there. And then I was
Hmm.
able to build on to all the other pieces.
So, specifically with Keep Up, how did you come up with the idea and what is your goal with the tech startup?
Yeah, so came up with the idea when I was working at my last job. So we were analyzing big data and social media. So when people talk online and they're talking to the public and they say something
Yeah.
like, I really love this movie. It was so cool. What
Mhm.
we were doing at my old agency was reading through those things and saying, 95% of these people love this movie, and here's why. And
Yeah.
it was really cool to be able to take all of this data that people think that they're just kind of talking into the blackness of social media,
Mhm.
but there are a lot of people who are listening to that, and companies also find that really, really valuable, because then they can say, oh, we love this movie, or these people didn't like it, and here's why. And it's very honest feedback. People on
Mhm.
social media are definitely, if anything, going to be
Yeah.
honest. So that was really cool, and that's where the idea for Keep Up came from. So I said, if we're taking all this data and we're looking at it and reading through it, and we had a whole team of like 10 people who were
Mhm.
doing this, what if we figured out a way to automate it? What if we figured out a way that an algorithm can come in and it could read it itself and then pull out all these different cool
That's
insights and ideas
awesome.
that people were saying? So it was really taking something that I was already doing and then seeing a need and a way to make it a little bit better.
Mhm. So, how have you seen, obviously from what you explained, there's a big need for something like what you've done. So, how have you seen people take advantage of Keep Up?
Yeah, so we actually started as a consumer app. So we were telling people that their friends had birthdays or weddings coming up, and that again came from my
Yeah.
own need. I was constantly missing what people were posting on Facebook and Twitter, and I really wanted to make sure that I kept up with their important events. And that just sort of turned into a business idea as well, because then we had some businesses come to us and say, I'm a salon owner and I do people's hair and makeup for their weddings. And it
Mhm.
would be really great if I knew when someone got engaged who was following
Oh,
me,
that's
or if I
great.
knew when
Yeah.
someone was getting married, because then I could reach out and say, congratulations on your marriage. Do you need
Mhm.
help with this? So it turned into business opportunities for them. And that's what we're seeing in all different ways, from real estate agents when they learn that people need to move, to universities when they find out that their alumni get
Yeah.
new jobs. That's really important for them. So pulling out these different information so that they can create real connections with their followers
Mhm.
versus just sending something out on their feed that no one's going to read.
That's awesome. And so going off of that really, what are some things that you want to improve about Keep Up or, develop further?
Yeah, I think there's always things that I want to
Yeah.
improve, and that's the nature of a tech company. And that's one of the things I love too, is that it's constant improvement. You're constantly having to find the new thing, or upgrade your technology.
Mhm.
For us, in terms of the business app that we have, we're still in the very beginning stages of building it out, and we have a lot of people on there who are testing it and using it. But for us, what we really want to do is make sure that you can use it across a team. So
Yeah.
that's one of our biggest goals, is to make sure that if you have a team of people who are working on something, they can all jump in, they
Mhm.
can all add to this. So that's one of the big features that we're building out next.
That's great. So, kind of shifting gears a little bit, how did Black Women Talk Tech start? And could you talk about maybe some of the beginning stages, challenges, but also successes in Black Women Talk Tech?
Yeah, absolutely. So Black Women Talk Tech started when I met my two co-founders at different tech conferences, and we just saw each other in the room. Oftentimes, we're the only women who are there,
Yeah.
or one of very few. So we're easy to spot.
Yeah.
And we always like to kind of talk to each other. So I met them both at different conferences. We ended up staying in touch,
That's
and
great.
we decided to have this retreat a couple of years ago
Wow.
where we had about 10 different founders come together. We spent the whole weekend at this really
That's
cool
so
house in
nice.
Connecticut and just talked about being an entrepreneur. And it felt so empowering and so great to share
Mhm.
with people who were going through the same things that you were and had the same experiences. And so from there, we really wanted to extend that a little bit and have maybe 30 people in a room. And that's what we did last
Mhm.
year for the conference in February of 2017. We said, oh, we'll just get 30 people in a room. But we got so much interest in it. We ended up
Wow.
having 14 speakers. We had
That's
90
great.
people come. We had over 300 people who wanted to apply.
Mhm.
And so we realized that there was a real opportunity here for this to be impactful and help other women founders who were going through the same things that we were. So we ended up creating a new actual company. And this year we're creating the conference again, but it's going to be a 2-day event.
That's
We're
awesome.
extending it to hundreds of people. We have brought in a ton of great partners that we're working with, like Microsoft, and it's really going to expand the impact that we had last year. And so
Mhm.
there are definitely growing pains that are associated with that. So it
Yeah.
wasn't all smooth sailing. I think figuring out something that we didn't know a lot about because we're tech founders and this
Mhm.
is really more of an event sort of business. So figuring out how to manage these different things was totally new to us. But I think hearing the stories that people have sent us where they say, I found funding after 2 years coming to one of your events, or I found my CTO through your newsletter, or I just feel so inspired by hearing these
Yeah.
stories of women who are doing this great stuff, really keeps us going. And we know that we're on the right path.
So, one of the things you brought up is, contacting companies like Microsoft and other big names for funding and support and things like that. I think oftentimes a lot of girls have great ideas, but we're not necessarily taught how to pursue and follow through with them. And at the end of the day, it oftentimes requires big companies like that for support. So, do you have any advice for girls on that issue of how do you get these companies interested in what you're doing if you don't have any connections? Most girls don't. How do you do that, really?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And you're totally right in that this happens to a lot of young girls, that they don't feel the confidence that
Mhm.
they need to go out and talk to these big companies. And what I'll say is just to get very, very comfortable with failure and rejection.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. I think if you want to do big things, you are going to fail and you're going to get rejected at some point in your career. And
Mhm.
especially when you're doing really well in school and you're really great in sports and you haven't felt that before, it can be sort of jarring.
Yeah.
But those are things that you really just have to get used to, and it's okay. It's totally
Yeah.
okay to fail. It's totally okay for people to say no, but the real thing that you need to measure is, am I trying? Am I moving forward?
Mhm.
And so in terms of actually doing these sort of things, I'm a huge fan of a cold email. I mean, you cold
Yeah.
emailed me and I
Yeah.
answered, right? And that's honestly what we have done for a lot of our different partners. We said, I'm interested in this. I'm going to send an email, and you would be surprised how many people
Yep.
actually answer and will write you back. And even if they can't do anything or if it doesn't work out that time, you've made that connection and you've made that impact. And a lot of times that leads to them introducing you to someone
Yeah.
else who can help you. So don't be afraid to send a cold email. You may not get an answer, but that's not the worst thing in the world. And you may get everything that you asked for.
Yeah. So, what do you see in terms of Black Women Talk Tech for the future of this now? That, just describing earlier the growth that you saw in such a short time period. What do you see, next?
Yeah, I think for us next is really building this out even more. So we want our next conference to be even bigger.
Mm-hmm.
But our real goal is figuring out ways to get resources and knowledge and funding to these Black women founders. So that's a big goal for us this year, whether it's creating our own fund or
Yeah.
creating a grant program or really just advising people a little bit more on how to bring money into their companies.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that there's a huge gap right now in terms of how much money that women are raising for their companies
Yeah.
versus how many men are raising, and that means that we can't really be competitive. So if my competitor has raised millions of dollars and I've only raised $10,000, there's not much that I can do in
Yeah.
that space. So we really want to focus on that and make sure that these women are getting not only the funding that they need, but then the support they need in order to build out great companies.
So you just mentioned funding. That's
Mhm.
something that really, in terms of people around my age, even young women that are might be in their 20s or 30s, it's just something that is not really discussed very
Mhm.
often. So
Right.
could you talk about maybe some of the challenges, but also obviously you've had to have some success with the funding or else you wouldn't be where you are today. So could you talk about that dynamic a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that goes back to the failure and rejection
Yeah.
piece that I was talking about. And I agree, funding is not something that I even understood or learned about until I started my company. I didn't know what the options were, I didn't know
Mhm.
how to go about doing it. It was really a big learning curve for me in order to figure out how to find the people who had money. How
Yeah.
do I pitch them? How do I make this happen? That's one of the big things that we want to cover with Black Women Talk Tech as well, is to put that knowledge in their hands about what is the right way to do this, because it's not widely shared.
Yeah.
But I will say that in terms of some of the barriers, there's definitely some barriers in terms of being a woman. I will say that
Mhm.
it's not impossible, but when you look at who these big tech leaders are, you automatically think of
Yeah.
someone like Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates or someone who really doesn't look like me
Yeah.
in particular. And it's not really um, conscious most of the time. I think women do it as well, but a lot of the times when you're pitching investors, they tend to be men, and they don't look at women as these leaders because they haven't really seen it yet.
Yeah.
So that's one of the barriers that you have to push forward in. But I would say the way to really fund your business and find the funding that you need is to keep going. When you get a no, it doesn't mean that everyone's going to say no. And
Mhm.
then find those people who really believe in you and really support you. That's so important. Even if you are getting tons of offers for money, you want to find the people who really work well for you, because
Mhm.
building a tech company is very, very hard. And you need to have that ongoing
Yeah.
long term support and someone who sees your vision. So hold out for that person. Wait for someone who's going to believe in you, believe in
Yeah.
your idea, and build you up. And I think that's the way to go about it.
So what would you say to a girl who thinks, God, I'm in AP Calc right now. I'm not the top of the class, or I'm in physics and I hate it, or I'm in bio and I'm really struggling, and they just say, I'm going to be a lawyer or I'm going to be a doctor, and they have this very narrow path of view, and STEM is just not in it at all. What would you say to convince them otherwise?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. What I'll say is that school is not at all like the real world. So
Yeah.
if you are struggling in your classes, and I'll say I was not at the top of my AP calculus and AP bio classes,
Mhm.
but it's not reflective of the way the world works, right? I haven't taken a test in years. I
Yeah.
haven't had to jam something
Exactly.
in my head and memorize it and then spit it out on a piece of paper the next day. That's not really how it works. You need to find something that really excites you. So think about what you like to watch on TV. What kind of shows do you gravitate towards? Do you like the sci-fi shows? What kind of articles are you reading online? Are they
Mhm.
things about new technology and cool products? Because those are the things that you're really thinking about and doing on a
Yeah.
daily basis in your career. So for me, I love tech because I get to read about all these cool new technologies that are
Yeah.
coming out. I get to integrate them into my business. I'm not really studying. I'm not really doing those sort of things. I'm doing the stuff that on a daily basis I love to do. So it doesn't feel like a job and it doesn't feel like work.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to thank you so much for giving up your time to do this today. And again, I'm STEMilyK, your hostess to the world of STEM. Bye!
All right, thanks.